Good, I like it. It's amazing the impact children have. Put a little excitement in. Do you love Jesus? Tell me why you love him. We've been having a good study in the end times, and I pray you've been enjoying this study. And we're now on that second theme. The first thing, we kind of established that timeline, and I left my cone somewhere. But anyway, we'll just move right along. Y'all kind of know where the positions are for the cones. And so in that timeline, we kind of established that 490 years or 70 weeks. And that 70th week, first it ended with the 69th week as a pause. And now we're in that church age. And then we believe that the 70th week will begin somewhere around the time with the rapture. And that last week is when all the different judgment going to take place. Excuse me, that. And so now we are in that theme now where we're discussing the signs of the time. These signs. And these signs that God has given us in his word are to let us know when Christ is going to come back. Or we also know that the second advent or his return. And so as you begin to look at these signs, especially in Matthew chapter 24, it's primarily to the Jews to kind of be on the lookout, those that are left behind, and look and say, okay, these are the things they're going to look like when Christ is about to return. But it also is a sign for us because he gives the indicator of birth pain. And if those women know the timing is getting near for that child to come forth, to begin to feel no birth pain. It first starts out with them contractions being farther apart. You may say, okay, I felt one here, I felt one there. But as they get closer, and they become to get more and more intense, time is getting closer. Amen. It's getting closer. You already got your bags packed. How many of y'all had them bags packed when the wife is near? Packed. They ready by the door. You had your plan in place. Say when you say it's time to go, to grab the bag, go get the car, and y'all off to the hospital. Notice the time. You're noticing, and what got you ready is because you started noticing the signs. The signs. The contraction got closer. You said we're getting closer, so we need to get ready. You start going through your plan. You start getting ready. You go through the process. So spiritually, we need to do the same thing. So you begin to see those signs, so you need to start preparing yourself, knowing that Christ can come back. And if Christ can come back anytime, that means the rapture is even closer. Amen. Right? The rapture is right around the corner. And we don't know when that day is. No one knows. But you begin to see the birth pain. We begin to see the contraction. So that means we need to start getting our ready-to-go bag. Ready to go. That means you need to start having a mindset that, hey, it can happen any moment. So you want to be ready to what? Meet Christ. You want to be ready. So now we're looking at those signs, and we kind of put them into categories. The first category we looked at, we called the rebirth of nations. We talked about Israel, how God brought them back. We also talked about how the Roman Empire was reborn again. The Babylonians will be reborn again. Matter of fact, I just recently heard a sermon I thought was pretty good. And he kind of gave some more indicators how the EU is in line to be that next, you can say, rebirth of the Roman Empire, based off the statue that's in front of their building. And I was like, wow. And also some of the other artifacts that they got that they are, you can say, hanging their hat on. It all lines up with that satanic stuff. And so then we look at spiritual deception as a sign, which means what it said, there will be a great falling away. A great falling away. And that's why I said, in order for a person to fall away, that means they're going to be deceived. They're going to be deceived. Somehow they're going to stop understanding or stop reading and seeking truth and begin to hear and take those false things. And we see that happen right before our eyes. People will believe a lie before they believe the truth. Amen. Even though we can sit here and show them over and over in the Bible how the Bible is relevant, how the Bible has proven itself to be very true, and there's no error, no fault, nothing wrong, and they still will sit down and accept it. Will not. And you can show them everything and be very convincing, and they still say, no, I'm going to listen to the person that's on TV. I'm going to listen to what I see on my phone, on social media. They know more, or what I believe to know more. Spiritual deception. And then we're looking at an increase in the spread of the gospel. That's what Matthew tells us. There's going to be an increase in the spread, and we believe because of this technology, now you got everybody live streaming. We're live streaming. All churches live streaming. Now it's becoming so easier for them to translate the Bible to other languages because of the computer age, this technology we have. And it's allowing the gospel to be spread all over the place. I remember when I was deployed at one setting, I think this when Charles Stanley had the recording, and he'll record his sermons, and somehow he got the military to buy them, and they would issue them out to all the military members. And you could just press play and hear Charles Stanley's sermons. I mean, I could be on the battlefield in the middle of a situation to hit play. And they start playing. And it's just amazing of the technology and how it is constantly advancing over and over again. And then we looked at the increase in immorality. As he said, as the days of Noah. As the days of Noah. And we see that happening right before our eyes. Where what was right at one time is now looked at as wrong. And what was wrong is now looked at as right. It's becoming like the days of Noah, church. So the next one that I have for you is, this will be the last one that we're going to discuss, is the nature signs. And let's go to Matthew chapter 24. We're going to look at verse 6 and 7. And he's dealing with the nature sign. I'm going to read. Let's see here where I want to start off at. We'll start off from verse 4. And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumor of wars, and see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be a famine and pestilence and earthquake in diverse places. And all these are the beginning of sorrow. So as we begin to read those verses there and see it in the text, and now you begin to see there's another type of sign that God is alerting us that we need to keep our eyes out for. And that sign is the nature sign. And they kind of list them out. Wars, rumors of wars. He's talking about nations shall rise against nation. That's deal with, you could say, race versus race. And it said kingdoms against kingdom. Now we get into different society, or different states, or you can say different countries against countries. And then it goes in and said famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to look at each one of those things there, and we're going to kind of break them down and say, okay, what did Christ mean when he presented them? And kind of maybe present some indicators that you should look at. Now, I'm not going to identify myself as no expert. You probably know some of this stuff better than I do when it comes to some of the stuff that you see in the news and stuff like that. But I'm just going to let you know this is what the Bible says. Be on the lookout for them. Be on the lookout. And so once you understand what God said and what the Bible is saying, then you begin to look at TV, look at the paper from a different perspective, because you'll be like, oh man, I remember this in the Bible. And it should give you confidence in the Bible, and that will begin to walk more confidence in trusting God and what he says. But it also should allow us to get ready, knowing that, you know what, these things are starting to happen. But what I want you to kind of key in on is all the different signs that I presented to you in these several different messages. It's not that they've never been happening over the years, it's that they all starting to happen together now. That's what I want you to kind of focus on. All the different signs that we have discussed, they're happening. We're looking at the rebirth of nations. You're seeing this stuff happen right now. You're seeing deception in the church happening right now. You're seeing the spread of the gospel right now. And then the increase in immorality. All this stuff is happening right now. The increase of it. Yes, for years you've been hearing the preaching on it. But some of the stuff, they were kind of looking at it from a distance saying, could it be or should it be? But now you begin to see it right before your eyes. This stuff is happening, church. So that should be an indicator that these things are all happening together to let us know that something is about to take place. So the first one, the sign that is mentioned here in chapter 24, verse 6, it said, wars and rumors of wars. And that's what he tells us there. And he begins to look at this thing here, and I kind of looked at some data online, and it said there are more than 44 armed conflicts globally, and that have caused at least over thousands of casualties in the past year. You see some of them in the news right now. You see the issue with China. That's a big issue, church. I'm not sure if you've been watching and paying attention, but China is coming in and saying, I want this island back. And America is standing between them and said, not over my dead body. And China is saying, you know what? Oh, you ain't going to push me around. I'm going to show you I'm bigger. So right now we got a standoff. They got their Navy out there. We got our Navy out there. They're just standing there looking at each other. That's a big deal, church. Amen. Pay attention. This is not a video game. There's a lot of military resources out there in that water, sitting there looking at each other with the guns pointed at each other. And they're just waiting on somebody to pull the trigger first. But thankfully, they're trying to do it diplomatically, but you know how that may go. And you begin to read different interviews with different senators and congressmen. This is a huge issue. So you got an issue with China trying to threaten Taiwan. And then you got North Korea. North Korea keep throwing these missiles up in the air. Why they keep trying to get this missile where it go up into space? Because they can put a nuclear weapon on it. Amen. And if they can put a nuclear weapon on it, and they can get this missile where it go up into space called the ICBM, which now possibly can reach who? Us. Amen. Be on the lookout, church. Things are happening right before you. Every time you see the news, North Korea just shot off another missile. They are trying to develop their weapon, is what they're doing. And each time they get higher and higher and higher. And then you have Iran, that threat that was against Israel. And then you also got Russia and Ukraine issue. That's been going on for a while, but you got more and more resources for other countries jumping in on this. All this stuff is happening right around us. Okay? We're saying the signs of war, the rumors of war. Then you also have stuff happening in Africa. There's wars going on there. I mean, it's all over the place. And you have uproar in these different countries. Then we get into nation shall rise against nation. How many of this? You see a lot of stuff is racial conflict. And I'm not talking about just in America. In overseas countries as well. When it's talking about nation, it's talking about different racial conflict. That's what we're referring when they say nations. And then they say kingdom, that's when they get into different countries or different, you would say, land barriers. So you see both of these things happening right now, church. Right now. How many protests do you see in the news, all these different countries? How one race saying we're not being treated fair. You see it happen here in America. You see it happen over there in other countries as well. It's happening. I'm going to read that verse to you again. He said, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of war. And he said, or, he said, and see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdoms, and there shall be famines. Let's go to the next one. Famines. Famines deals with that lack of resources, hunger. That's what the word famine is referred to. And to kind of give you a specific definition, it means in want of food, hungry. And specifically in this text here in Matthew 24, it refers to cities and countries who experience a shortage of food. Now you may say, well, man, we got so much food here in America. Do we? I can tell you there's a lot of kids going home hungry. They don't have the money to go to the store and buy stuff. I know kid person, that's a struggle for them. They depend on that free meal or free lunches or that free resource that they get because the food at home is very scarce. So don't assume just because my kitchen or my refrigerator is full that there's somebody down the road refrigerator's not. But then you start looking at it globally. I'm going to kind of give you some data here. When we're talking about this famine here, talking about and how it's beginning to impact the world. Today in our society, the UN World Food Program has basically estimated, this is as of July 22, 345 million globally is on the brink of starvation. That is a 156% increase from COVID-19. That's when that started. That's an increase. From the time COVID-19 basically started, we have an increase of 156%. And then they said 25% of that was an increase since the Ukraine-Russia war. So what you're going to see here, all this stuff is connected. When you see a rise in one, the other get affected as well. And so now we're talking about these famines. And then you're talking about, according to the World Program, from 79 countries. Now, you may not know what the World Food Program is, but that is a humanitarian organization who goes out there and provide food in the time of emergencies. That's what they are. And they do it globally, okay? And so their data is pretty good when you look at their data as in what's going on when it comes to the humanitarian or the food crisis in our world. And it said, according to this World Food Program, from 79 countries they work in, and based off their data available, data show that more than 345 million people face high level of food insecurity in 2023, and that is more than double in 2020. Double. And they believe that what's causing all this is extreme weather, rising cost, conflict, and continue in the worst of global food crisis. That's what they believe is causing all this food shortage. The weather issue, the wars, economic issues is causing the food shortage. And then you begin to look at all the different signs. Those are the different signs that God said are going to start happening. They're all connected, church. They're connected. But let's look at some things historically here to kind of show you how these famines can affect a society. In Acts 11:28, it reveals to us, and I'm going to read the verse here, and I'm going to read from verse 27, because this is where it talks about how a prophet prophesied that there was going to be a famine in Rome. And so in Acts 11:27, he said, and in these days came prophet from Jerusalem and to Antioch, and there stood upon one of them named Agabus, and signified by the Spirit that there should be a great dearth, which is a famine, throughout all the world, which came to pass in the day of Claudius Caesar. Okay, so now we know that there was a famine there in that time frame. So now we're going to look at some historical record and see what type of famine was known during the time of Claudius, during his reign as emperor in Rome. So if you look at by the second year of Claudius' reign, he said there was a famine in Rome from the difficulty of importing provision from abroad, which means there was an issue with the supply chain. So an issue with supply chain can cause a famine. Did we have an issue with supply chain at one time, especially during the COVID? We couldn't get truckers on the road. You couldn't get workers in the factory. You couldn't get workers on the farm. So if you couldn't get these workers out there to harvest the food, it creates a what? A famine. Okay? So that took place during the Rome time frame. There was another that was caused by income shortage and inflation. He said during Claudius' 4th through his 2nd year in Judea, many people died from the lack of what was necessary to procure food withal. Matter of fact, they said one of the queens that was in Judea had sent money out to try to get them to buy resources in foreign land. I'm just going to let you know how it impacts society so you can understand how it's going to impact us too. So we see in Rome that it impacted them because it was a supply chain issue. They couldn't get the supplies in. Now you see in Judea, which I believe is what Acts 11 is referring to, saying that because of income shortages and inflation, the cost. And then you go back to another one during the 9th year of Claudius. He said in Greece, a second famine was basically caused because of inflation. He kind of give you an example that a bushel of wheat went from one, I think I can't get the name of the money. I think a drachmas or something like that. It went from 1 to 6. That's a big increase. It's like something in the store going from $1 to almost $6. Or your gas going from $2 something to almost $4. And you know what happened when the gas prices went up. So when the gas prices went up in our society, everything else went up. Food went up. Then they started to give, how many of y'all had the additional bills coming in? This was a surcharge bill for additional cost in the gas. Everything went up because of one item went up, gas. So as you can see here, even in the Rome time, they had these issues they had to face was famine. So you can kind of see how they impact society. And there was one more, and they said during the last year or the last time of his reign, and they believed that this famine was so severe in Rome that they defined it as God's judgment. God's judgment. God allows things, church, to happen for a reason. And he used natural disasters. He used hold back rain. You hold back rain, they're going to cause a famine. You cause the locusts to come, it's going to cause a famine. So God used all these different nature or natural things to bring about his purpose and his will. And the Bible make it very clear to us that during these times, these birth pains, it's going to be famines. And then the next one is pestilence. Pestilence. Go to the next verse. Or the same verse, but the next word. He said famines and pestilence. What is pestilence? Pestilence is diseases. Diseases. Now, we just came through a virus issue. It's still lingering around a little bit, but it ain't like it was. All right. But we had over 6.9 people die, at least that's what they identify, died from coronavirus. That's a lot. But then you begin to look over the years, there's a lot of people that died from a lot of things. And even there's one disease that is still reigning as number one that causes the most death globally is heart disease. I want to look that up this morning. And over the World Health Organization, they labeled that as the number one disease, heart disease, is heart attacks that people die from. And we all probably know somebody who have died from a heart attack. I have people in my family. You probably have people in your family. And then you look at, why do we have so many people dying from heart attack? Heart attack is what? That calluses build up in the arteries and everything that come from what? Bad eating, poor exercising. We'll get into society where we don't do nothing but sit down and what? That's what we do. No exercise. The body's not moving. And it's just getting bigger. And we all have, my belt got to loosen it up a little bit. Because we're not active as it used to be. The body is designed to be active. I remember when we was in Virginia, one of our neighbors that stayed in the neighborhood, and he'd be running every day. And I talked to him one time. He said, the body's not designed to just sit there and do nothing. It's designed to be active. You got to be moving. Then they start coming up with stuff where when you have a desk, you stand up and work, because they want you to stay active, moving. But we don't like moving. We want to sit down. We want to eat stuff that's not good for us and don't realize it's causing this thing, heart disease, to happen in our society. The number one cause. Even though we lost 6.9 million from coronavirus, it still did not peak heart disease and what it's doing. But the Bible said these are the times, famines, pestilence, and there's a lot of diseases you can see out there. And there's still others overseas in other countries that are taking place. Diseases. So we looked at wars and rumors of wars. We looked at famines. We looked at pestilence. And then look at this thing called signs of earthquakes in diverse places. So we got famine, pestilence, and earthquake. You'll notice that there's a conjunction and between each one, which means that all three of these things are going to be taking place diverse all over the place. So as you begin to look around at your news and check out the internet, you're going to see famines, which is people are starving. You're going to see pestilence, people with disease and all type of infection, and that could come from bad eating or not eating or poor health. And then you're also going to see earthquake. That means those natural disasters taking place. Now, one thing that I did find, and then somebody had an article, he said that the world's number of earthquakes of a 5.0 or higher has increased 54% between 2020 and 2021, according to the Geology Survey of the U.S. Geological Survey. And he said, and the latter three of an 8.0 magnitude of higher was more than since 2007. So right there, he's telling us the earthquakes are kind of sort of increasing. But you kind of look at other data, they're saying it's almost kind of averaging out. But one thing that you can see is the effects or the consequences of earthquakes. So I looked at it and said, okay, what do an earthquake cause? So one thing that we know earthquake cause is ground shaking. That's obvious. Then you also see soil liquefaction. That's basically the soil just turned to liquid and just kind of drain through. And then you have landslide. You have cracks in the ground. You have avalanche. You have fires, tsunamis, and volcano eruptions. So when you look at all those things there, how many do you see those things happening around the world now? A lot of them. Yes, sometimes earthquake happen out in the water, which causes what? A tsunami. Sometimes it happens on land and causes a volcano eruption. Sometimes it causes all these other things that we're seeing here, landslide, mudslide, all the different things happening. All because of the earth shaking underneath. And so when you begin to look at it from that perspective, you'll be like, man, there's a lot of consequences of earthquake happening around us. Globally. And so there's a lot of consequences. And then you look at it historically. Historically, everybody familiar with Pompeii? If you went to Carowinds, you know they got to ride Pompeii. I think it's Carowinds. I might be talking about another theme park. I've been to so many, get them confused. So Pompeii is that place where during the Roman era or Greece era, and a volcano erupted. And this volcano erupted, and it pretty much killed a lot of people and destroyed that whole area of Pompeii. But one thing I began to learn about this, before that volcano erupted, there was several earthquakes. They said Nero was actually in Pompeii during one of the earthquakes. And so he was given some type of entertainment that he was doing. And he said during his entertainment, an earthquake took place, and he continued to finish up until he finished the song or finished whatever he was doing, and then the earthquake ended. And then shortly after that, one of the theaters collapsed. So the point I'm trying to make is they had multiple earthquakes. And they got to the point where they got comfortable with the earthquakes. Hear me out, church. They got very comfortable with the ground shaking. They ignored the warning signs. They said 2 or 3 days prior to the volcanic eruption, there was multiple small earthquakes. That they just went about their normal lives, ignoring and said, it'll go away. It'll go away. Then all of a sudden, eruption, boom. And nobody could escape it because it was too late. How many people are ignoring the warning signs today? The ground is shaking, church. The ground is shaking. It's nothing. Oh, it's nothing. It's not a big deal. Just carry on. Ignore it. Ignore it. Then one day, the eruption going to take place. And you're going to be caught. And you're going to be wondering why I didn't listen. Church, these signs that God has given us in the Bible are all warning signs. He described them as birth pains, just like contraction during a birth. As the contraction get closer and you know that time is near, you start preparing yourself. Get the bag ready. Get everything ready. Get everything in order. You start calling up, hey, if this happened, I'm going to drop the other kids off at your house. You get everything ready. Ready. But seem like spiritually, we forget about being ready. We forget about it. We go around as if nothing is going to change. Everything going to stay like it is. Just go and pursue your own dream and what you want. When God is saying, take heed to the warning. I'm going to give you a verse here, church. We're going to close out here. In Luke 21:34, and it says here, he said, take heed to yourselves. Take heed. Take heed. Be watchful. Be looking. I'm now going to this whole series of end time so that we have a better understanding, so I can increase your awareness, so you can now be walking circumspectly, looking. So you can be like, oh, I need to get my backpack. Get ready, because time is coming. But he says here, he said, lest at any time your heart be overcharged with surety. Surety is basically overindulgent in lustful things. It's overindulgent. That's what that word means there. He said, and in drunkenness and cares of this life. He said, be looking. Because if you're not looking at me, you're going to get lazy and comfortable and complacent. And you're going to be caught unaware. Let's continue to read what it says here. He said, for as a snare, I have to go back and read it again. He said, and take heed to yourself, lest at any time your heart be overcharged with surety and drunkenness and carefulness of this life, and so that day come upon you unaware. Unaware. Now I got it. This message is directed to the Jews who might be in the tribulation time period. But it's also a message to us as well. To let us know that, hey, if this is an indicator that Jesus is coming back soon, that definitely tells us that the rapture is even closer. Amen. Even closer. And so don't get caught unaware. Don't be caught. Because when the rapture takes place, you ain't going to have time on the way up and say, God, please forgive me this. God, please forgive me for that. God, please forgive me for this. Believe me, you ain't going to have time to clean out your sin closet. What you get caught up with is what you're going to have to face Christ with. So that means if we believe that the rapture is coming near, you need to keep your closet clean. Amen. Keep it clean now. Don't start piling up, throwing your bones in there, your skeleton there, because all of a sudden you say, well, I'll deal with that later. You don't know when that day is going to come. You have no idea. And many of us going to get caught up and be like, oh, Lord, He about to expose all my sinfulness, all my wickedness about to get put on display because I refuse to confess it. Amen. To confess it. That is my challenge for us today, church. Take heed. Be watchful. Because these signs, I only gave you a few of them. There's plenty of signs in the Bible, but I want to give you a few that's obvious in chapter 24 of Matthew. That we need to be looking at, we need to be walking with our head on a swivel. Always aware of what's around you. Don't just look at news and, oh, here we go with more politics. Look and see, okay, what's going on here? When you look at the global stuff, look and see what's going on. But I must admit, since I've been studying this, I've been looking at news a little different now. A little different. I'm like, oh, okay. It's starting to brain me like, okay, I get a little more excited about this thing. So I pray you're doing the same thing. And now you begin to read your Bible. You even read the Bible differently. You begin, man, that's a prophecy there. That's something that talk about what's coming. It's something about studying end times. Amen. It's something about it. Because you notice only one book in the Bible says you'll be blessed from reading, and that's the book of Revelation. You'll be blessed by just reading it. That's right. So that means there's something special about studying last things. And I'm thankful God leading me to do this study. And I pray none of you are getting bored with it, that you'll get excited, want to know more, because the next message we're going to get into is talk about the actual tribulation period. And so we're going to get into that next week. So now I just pray, as Mike get ready to lead us in a song, that you think about what skeletons or bones or dirt you got hidden in your closet that need to be cleaned out. God make it very simple for us. He said, if you confess your sins, amen, he is faithful and just to forgive you of all of your sins. All of them. Not just one, all of them. But whatever God is bringing to your memory, it's right there that you're sitting there and something coming to your mind, man, I need to confess this. This issue here, I know I'm doing wrong. I know I shouldn't have. I know I shouldn't have been doing this. That's when God is tapping you, say, I need you to bring that to me. I need you to bring it to me. And it's amazing how God does that. He knows what you're hiding. He knows it. You're not hiding anything from him. But he always alerts us with a little tap in our heart. You know that's wrong. You know you lied. You know you stole. You know that you was thinking or seeing and watching something you shouldn't be watching. You know you were doing something you shouldn't be doing. He said, you did just go ahead and bring that to the foot of the cross. Acknowledge it and bring it to the foot of the cross so we can get it behind us so I can help you move forward. So as Mike begins to lead us in the song, what is God tapping on your heart that need to be confessed? If he tapping on your heart, come to this old altar and take care of business with God.
Hymn 375, Work for the Night is Coming.
Amen.